The shot echoed across Fort Ridgeline like a thunderclap torn from the past. It wasn't the piercing crack of a modern sniper rifle, but a deep resonant boom, a sound carved from history. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A bird, startled from the rooftop, took flight, cutting a shadow across the late morning sun. When the smoke cleared, there he stood. Logan Walker. Worn Marine Corps jacket hanging loose from broad shoulders, sleeves sun-faded and threadbare. A canvas duffel slung over one side, boots caked in mountain dust. And in his hands, an M1 Garand. World War II issue. Heavy. Rusted at the hinge. Outdated. And deadly silent in the right hands. Silence fell, not because of what the bullet hit, but because he had fired it. Because no one was supposed to fire that rifle at all. Certainly not here. Not in the middle of a tech demo event. And definitely not in front of Alexis Stone, the steel-nerved CEO of Nova Corps Defense, and a dozen skeptical Marines evaluating $12 million worth of next-gen sniper systems. But Logan didn't care about the optics, or the cameras, or the whispers. He hadn't come for glory. He hadn't come to compete. He came for something else entirely. And yet with one shot, he stole the whole damn field. If stories of quiet warriors, second chances, and the kind of strength that can't be coded into a machine, move your heart, stay with us. This one might just aim straight for yours. 2 hours earlier. The Fort Ridgeline training grounds were buzzing with energy, sharp commands, boot heels drilling the gravel laughter from young recruits, testing the recoil of prototype weapons under the late spring sun. It was Tech Integration Day, and for Nova Corps, it was more than a showcase. It was a stage. A sleek black SUV had delivered Alexis Stone all sharp angles and confidence, a woman whose power suits were tailored like armor. She greeted the commanders and high-ranking brass with the same cold professionalism she used in boardrooms. Her new AI-assisted sniper platform, X-Seraphim, was today's star. She didn't have time for nostalgia or relics, which made the arrival of Logan Walker feel like a glitch in the system. He pulled up in a dented Chevy pickup that coughed twice before dying into silence. Dust clouded the air as he stepped out, adjusting the strap of the duffel bag on his shoulder. Lila, his 9-year-old daughter, hopped down behind him, her long braids swinging under a worn baseball cap. Logan didn't look at anyone. He scanned the perimeter with the instincts of a man who once memorized battlefield exits in 5 seconds. Flat. Then he walked slow and deliberate toward the observation stands. He hadn't even made it 10 paces before someone snorted behind a pair of mirrored sunglasses. "Hey, look at this guy," said one young Marine, elbowing his buddy. Gramps brought a museum piece. Laughter rippled through the group louder when they noticed the rifle slung over Logan's shoulder. The M1 Garand. One Marine whistled. "You planning to shoot Nazis, Pops?" The crowd parted as a voice sharper than the rest cut in. "Unless that thing fires plasma rounds, I'd suggest heading back to your knitting circle." Staff Sergeant Kyle Maddox, square jaw, buzz cut. The pride of Fort Ridgeline's Sniper Division, and as of last month, the official face of Nova Corps' military integration campaign. He strutted up, flanked by 2 younger soldiers and a camera crew trailing for B-roll footage. Logan stopped. He didn't reply, didn't blink, just gave Kyle a slow once-over and adjusted the duffel on his shoulder. Kyle sneered. "Seriously? What are you doing here, man? Tours for veterans ended last week." Lila moved to stand behind her father, clearly uncomfortable. Logan's jaw tightened. "I'm here for the demonstration," he said simply. Kyle laughed. "That's rich. What, hoping to relive the glory days your antique won't even register on the digital targets?" Logan didn't flinch. I didn't come to compete. That's when Alexis Stone turned. Up until then, she'd ignored the scene unfolding near the bleachers. But something in the way Kyle's smirk curled too wide, or maybe the way the girl clutched her father's shirt drew her gaze. "What's going on?" she asked. heels clicking on concrete as she approached. Kyle straightened like a schoolboy. "Just clearing the field, ma'am. This guy thinks it's a public range." Alexis raised a perfectly sculpted brow. Name Logan looked her in the eyes. Logan Walker. She paused. There was something in his voice like steel hammered in fire. Her gaze dropped to the Garand, then to the little girl behind him. "And your daughter Lila. She's just watching." Alexis studied him. "We're testing 12 million in weapon systems today. It's not a child-friendly event." "I'm not here to cause trouble," Logan said. "We drove 4 hours. Thought she could learn something." Kyle couldn't help himself. "Yeah, she'll learn how to load a dinosaur." More laughter. Then Lila, soft as a whisper, spoke. "My dad's rifle saved lives." The laughter died. Alexis narrowed her eyes. "What unit?" she asked Logan. 3rd Battalion. Lima Company. Fallujah, then Sangin. A beat of silence. Even Kyle's smirk faded. Alexis nodded slowly. "Well, since you're here, maybe you can show us what that relic can do." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Logan didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked down to Lila, who was being nudged aside by a recruit trying to block her view. That was it. He stepped forward. "If it's a demonstration you want," Logan said, quietly sliding the Garand off his shoulder, "then let's make it one to remember." The wind shifted slightly across the range, carrying with it the scent of scorched gravel gun oil and something older, something like tension thickening in the lungs of everyone present. The kind of stillness that settles just before thunder. Staff Sergeant Kyle Maddox grinned like a man who'd just been handed a stage. He twirled his state-of-the-art sniper rifle like a cowboy showboating his revolver, then slung it over his shoulder and turned toward Alexis Stone with performative confidence. "Permission to propose a little good-natured demonstration, ma'am," he asked, eyes never leaving Logan. Alexis crossed her arms, one brow arching just slightly. "Define good-natured." Kyle jerked his chin toward Logan. "Let's put the old man's legend to the test. 1-on-1. Friendly match. My ex-Seraphim against his antique." Laughter erupted again, less mocking this time, more intrigued. The kind of laugh people use when they smell blood in the water. Logan didn't flinch. Alexis turned to him. "You said you weren't here to compete." "I wasn't," Logan said flatly. "But now you are," she pressed, folding her arms. He didn't answer. Not directly. His hand went to Lila's shoulder. She looked up at him, brows furrowed, not in fear, but in a quiet plea only a daughter could make. And then it happened. One of the younger Marines, barely 20 by the look of him, stepped too close to Lila and waved her off. "Go on, sweetheart. This is grown-up business now." He didn't say it cruelly. He probably thought he was being gentle. But the look in Lila's eyes changed. She shrank back a step, cheeks flushed. Logan saw it. His expression didn't harden. If anything, it softened. But the shift in his posture was unmistakable. His spine straightened, his shoulders squared, and the weariness that clung to him like road dust evaporated. He turned to Alexis. "If it's allowed, I'll accept the challenge." A murmur moved through the crowd like a wave. One of the Nova Corps execs stepped forward, clearly nervous. "Ms. Stone, are we really going to?" "Yes," she said without looking at him. "Let's see how it plays out." She glanced toward the tech crew. "Set up 2 identical lanes, standard steel targets. Let's keep it within regulation. 5 shots each, 100 to 600 yards timed." Kyle gave a mock bow. "Shouldn't we give him a handicap?" Alexis didn't smile. "You sure you'll need one?" A few snickers broke out from the ranks. The prep took 20 minutes. A buzz hung in the air like a football game warming up. Marines lined the observation stands, some out of curiosity, others out of disbelief. Kyle stepped to the shooting platform first, casually tapping into the wrist pad display that connected to his rifle's smart scope. He adjusted the algorithmic settings, called up wind speed feedback, even synced his eye-tracking visor. Logan, by contrast, knelt beside his Garand. He opened a battered cloth pouch, revealing 5 3006 cartridges, each one hand-cleaned, the brass not gleaming, but functional. His motions were slow, practiced. He loaded each round like he was laying bricks, steady, methodical. Lila sat quietly near the bleacher's legs, crossed hands resting on her lap, eyes never leaving her father. One of the range officers raised a red flag. Targets. Hot in. 2. 1. Kyle went first. His rifle made barely a whisper. A hissing crack. Clang, first target down. Another hiss. Clang. 2 more in rapid succession. On his 5th shot, he shifted position slightly and fired. Clang. 5 for 5. Time 28 seconds. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Kyle spun the rifle dramatically and winked at the nearest camera. Beat that, Garand. Logan stepped forward. No tablets, no visor, no wind sensors, just breath. He placed one knee down slowly, the gravel grinding under his worn boot. The range officer looked over, uncertain. Ready? Logan nodded once. Begin. The Garand's boom cracked across the range like thunder from a forgotten war. The first steel plate shuddered, then fell. There was a delay before the second shot. Long enough that someone whispered, "Is he recalculating wind?" He wasn't. He was watching, feeling, letting the breath go when the world was still. Boom. Second plate down. By the 3rd shot, even the camera crew had gone silent. Boom. 4th target. Then 5th. Boom. Each shot landed dead center. His total time 41 seconds. Slower. But not a single miss. And no computer assistance. No crosshair. No second chances. Just a man and a rifle older than most people in the crowd. The silence afterward was total. Kyle stood frozen, visor half-lowered, expression unreadable. Someone exhaled audibly. Alexis stepped forward, eyes unreadable. "You're not just here to let your daughter watch a demonstration," she said. Logan slowly got to his feet, slinging the Garand over his shoulder once more. "I told her she'd see something no screen could teach." "And what's that?" Alexis asked. He looked past her toward Lila, who now stood, tiny fists, clenched eyes, shining. "That strength doesn't come from sensors. It comes from the heart that pulls the trigger." It wasn't supposed to matter. That was what everyone told themselves, as Logan Walker stepped down from the platform, his rifle quiet, his pace unhurried, his eyes unbothered. "It's just nostalgia," someone muttered. "Lucky grouping. He's not faster. He's just dramatic." But deep down, those watching knew the truth. What Logan had done wasn't flashy. It wasn't technical. It was fundamental. He made 5 shots with a rifle 3 times older than the man he was competing against, without any digital aids, smart scopes, or targeting overlays. And he didn't just hit the targets. He understood them. Read the wind like a symphony. Fired not when the math said now, but when instinct whispered, "Trust me." And for the first time in a long time, the Marines watching weren't talking about tech specs or recoil dampeners. They were talking about feel. Up on the command platform, Alexis Stone said nothing. She stood apart from the crowd arms, folded face unreadable behind dark sunglasses. But her mind was moving fast. Too fast. She'd built NovaCore on precision innovation and ruthless efficiency. That's why the Pentagon listened. That's why she was the only civilian granted full testing clearance at Fort Ridgeline. But this wasn't part of the brochure. A man with no credentials, no clearance, no corporate ties, had just humbled her company's $12 million prototype with a rifle that predated her board of directors. And worse, he did it with grace. No bravado, no celebration, just silence and presence. That was harder to dismiss than she cared to admit. Down on the gravel, Kyle Maddox wiped his brow, though the day wasn't hot. He paced behind the shooting platform, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. Logan's performance wasn't a win in a formal sense. The match wasn't even official, but everyone felt the result. And Kyle, once the golden boy, now walked through a silence that clung like wet cloth. He passed Lila on the way to the tents. The girl looked up at him, not mocking, not smug, just curious, wide-eyed. Kyle looked away. Logan returned to the edge of the bleachers, where Lila sat cross-legged, hugging her knees. "You okay?" he asked, voice quiet. She nodded. I counted all 5. He gave her a faint smile. "I know you did." She hesitated. "They were watching you, Dad. Like you were important." Logan glanced toward the stands where a group of young Marines still whispered behind cupped hands. "I'm not," he said. "Not anymore." Lila leaned her head against his arm. "I think maybe you are." That afternoon, Alexis called for a break in the schedule. Testing would resume in the morning. Equipment check, target calibration, and weather delay would serve as official explanations. Unofficially, every tech in the NovaCorps tent knew exactly why the day was being reset. Logan Walker had just rewritten the rules, without saying a word. That evening, the officers and NovaCorps personnel gathered in the conference lounge overlooking the range. Whiskey flowed freely. Conversations buzzed mostly about budgets, approvals, and logistics. Alexis stood near the back, nursing a club soda. She didn't drink. Not anymore. Not since her father's funeral 7 years ago, after which she'd built NovaCorps in his image out of grief and grit. There wasn't time for sentimentality in war tech. There was only performance. But now that image was cracking. "Alexis," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Colonel Banks, Range Commander, Vietnam-era hardliner, and one of the few men she respected on this base. "Quite a show this morning," he said, sipping his drink. "Didn't expect it. Frankly, didn't think that rifle would even fire." "He made it sing," she said quietly. The colonel nodded. "He's not just good. He's trained different. That's Fallujah in his posture, and Sangan in his eyes." "You know him?" Alexis asked. Banks nodded. "I knew of him. Walker was one of the best, but he disappeared after his wife passed. Didn't want medals, didn't want pity. Just walked off the grid and raised his girl." Alexis was quiet for a long moment. Then, he didn't come here for show. So why did he come? Banks smiled behind his glass. "You've got all the data in the world, Alexis, but you still don't see what's right in front of you." She turned toward him, curious. "He came here," Banks said, "because he wanted her to see what real strength looks like. Not the kind that makes headlines. The kind that holds steady when no one's looking." Alexis's eyes flicked to the window, where the range now sat empty, bathed in golden dusk. And somewhere out there, in a rusted pickup at the base lot, a quiet man and his daughter were eating takeout on the hood, watching the sun fall behind the ridgeline. She didn't know why it made her chest feel tight, but it did. Back at their truck, Logan broke apart 2 grilled cheese sandwiches with a plastic knife. Lila chewed thoughtfully, then pointed toward the empty range. "Dadya, if you had used one of their rifles, would you have won faster?" Logan smiled faintly. "Maybe." "Then why didn't you?" He paused. "Because speed isn't always the point." "Then what is?" He looked at her, his voice gentle but firm. "Understanding what you're aiming for. And why." She nodded slowly. "Then can I try sometime?" He looked down at her, this small, strong-willed girl who had seen too much, yet still asked with hope in her voice. "Someday," he said. Then added, after a long pause, "Maybe sooner than you think." The next morning dawned crisp and quiet, with low clouds hugging the tree line behind Fort Ridgeline. Dew clung to the steel targets like frost, and the scent of cordite still lingered faintly from yesterday's exercises. But something in the air had changed. It wasn't in the weather, it was in the eyes of the men. The recruits were quieter now, not in fear, but in thought. Something about watching Logan Walker fire a WWII relic and land 5 perfect shots without blinking had rewired their assumptions. It had made some of them uncomfortable. It had made others hungry. The final event of the NovaCore demo had been pushed to mid-morning, a showcase challenge for media and internal military brass. Alexis Stone had insisted on keeping it in the schedule. This time, it was open to volunteers. Kyle Maddox, face unreadable, stepped forward first. He didn't even wait for the announcer to call for names. "I'll go," he said simply. Alexis didn't stop him. She just gave a small nod, then looked around the crowd. "Any others?" No one spoke. Then Logan, standing with Lila at the edge of the field, stepped forward. Not for glory, not for ego, but because Lila had whispered something to him earlier. "You don't have to prove anything, Dad, but I think they still need to see." And that was reason enough. He gently handed her a small wrapped sandwich to finish, patted her head, and walked toward the line. Kyle was already prepping his ex-Seraphim, now fitted, with its latest firmware update and recoil-dampening tech. He didn't look at Logan as he loaded the magazine, but the air between them was thicker than humidity. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeakers. "Final exhibition challenge 600-yard double target. 2 shooters, 2 rounds. Each will attempt to strike the left rivet of the center steel plate, then the suspended spinner plate behind it. Precision is the focus. Fastest accurate completion wins." The crowd leaned in. The spinner plate was a notoriously tricky shot, half the size of a license plate, designed to rotate violently when hit. The challenge was hitting the second plate, while it spun a test of instinct and adaptability. Kyle went first. He lay prone, fingers dancing over the rifle's settings, as though it were a piano. The scope glowed faint blue. Click. Ping. The first target dropped. He took a half-second to recenter and fired again. Clang, clink. The spinner plate jerked sideways and rocked violently, but he'd clipped it. Not dead center, but a clean hit. The timer buzzed 17.6 seconds. A decent run. Technically excellent. There was restrained applause. He stood without looking back and stepped aside. Then Logan knelt. No gloves, no tech, just breath and steel. The announcer gave the go-ahead. Logan didn't move. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Some in the crowd began to murmur. Was he hesitating? But Alexis, watching from the command booth, saw the truth. He wasn't waiting. He was listening. The wind, the silence, the weight of the rifle in his hands. And then, boom! The Garand roared. The rivet on the center plate disintegrated. Before the first echo finished, bouncing off the ridgeline, boom. The spinner plate jerked back and stopped. Dead center. No rotation. Just impact. A direct hit. The range went silent. No timer buzzed. No one moved. Then someone in the observation tent dropped their coffee. The cup shattered. But no one looked away from the field. The silence stretched long. Longer. Alexis slowly removed her sunglasses. Beside her, the NATO observer whispered half to himself. That wasn't a shot. That was a signature. Lila clapped. Once, then caught herself. She looked around wide-eyed, as grown Marines, some of whom had mocked her father less than 24 hours ago, stood with hands on hips, heads down, quietly nodding. It wasn't victory that filled the air. It was reverence. Later in the staging tent, Kyle Maddox sat alone on a bench, elbows on knees, rifle across his lap. He stared at the ground, blinking hard. He wasn't angry. He was quiet. For the first time in years, he had no words. Then a pair of boots stopped in front of him. Logan. He didn't sit, just looked at Kyle. Kyle finally spoke, his voice hoarse. That last shot. How Logan's answer was low. I didn't aim for the medal. I aimed for the moment. Kyle looked up. Logan continued. You see the plate. I see the memory. My buddy Mike. He froze once in the valley under fire. I remember the way his hands shook, the way the dust lifted when he exhaled. I see that, and I shoot through it. Every time. Kyle's eyes dropped again. I forgot what it meant to feel the shot, he admitted. Logan nodded. Then start remembering. Up in the command center, Alexis Stone faced a new kind of dilemma. Everything she stood for, automation, digital precision, scalable defense, had just been rendered human again. And that terrified her, and thrilled her. She stared out the window at Logan, who was kneeling beside Lila again, wiping a smudge of mustard off her chin while she giggled. This man, she thought, isn't trying to be a hero. He's trying to be a father. And that made him more powerful than any title ever could. The plaque on the weapons tent read, "Precision through innovation." But for the rest of the day, no one talked about innovation. They talked about Logan Walker. By noon, his name had made its way into at least 3 after-action reports, 24 hushed conversations, and 1 secure call to the Department of Defense. None of that mattered to Logan. He was back at the truck, stripping the Garand with quiet focus, running a soft bristle brush over the aged bolt, like he was tending to an old friend. His fingers moved with practiced ease, not because he needed to impress, but because respect had been built into his bones. Lila sat cross-legged in the truck bed, watching with open admiration. "Did Grandpa teach you to clean it like that?" she asked. Logan gave a small smile. "No, the Marines did. But Grandpa taught me why it matters." She tilted her head. Why, he looked up at her. Because when something saves your life, you don't treat it like a tool. You treat it like memory. Lila didn't fully understand, but she nodded as if she wanted to. Across the base, Alexis Stone sat in her temporary office, converted from an old supply trailer, scrolling through Logan's background on a secure tablet. Classified reports, some partially redacted. Photos faded by age. Sniper logs from Fallujah. Medal recommendations that were never accepted. Letters declining promotion. And then an obituary. His wife, Claire Walker. Passed 6 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Survived by husband and daughter Lila. Alexis lingered on a photo embedded at the bottom. Logan arms around a younger Lila, standing barefoot in the snow outside a wood cabin. No smiles, just quiet endurance. Then she noticed the file attached a sealed field evaluation. She tapped it open. Walker demonstrates hyperintuition in unpredictable combat environments. His decision-making reflects not aggression, but profound restraint. Recommends psychological evaluation, not for instability, but for depth. She leaned back in her chair. Logan Walker didn't just have skill. He had a kind of moral gravity, the kind that pulls everyone silently toward him, without ever asking them to follow. By late afternoon, the sun had baked the gravel warm beneath Logan's boots. He was finishing up a quiet walk with Lila, when a voice called out behind him. "Logan Walker." He turned. A uniformed officer approached, flanked by 2 Nova Corps reps and Alexis herself. "We'd like a word." Lila instinctively took her father's hand. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Something wrong?" No, Alexis said. Quite the opposite. She stepped forward holding a sleek black folder. The Nova Corps logo shimmered faintly on its cover. "I'd like to formally invite you to serve as a senior advisor for a new pilot program. We're launching something called Project Resolve. It's about restoring field instincts, human skills, to counterbalance over-reliance on tech. We want to train the next generation with more than machines. We want to train them with you." Logan glanced down at Lila, then back at Alexis. "Why me?" Alexis didn't blink. "Because machines can win battles, but people like you win wars that matter." They sat at a picnic table outside the barracks that evening, just the 2 of them, Logan and Alexis. It wasn't an official meeting. No files, No briefings, just grilled chicken in plastic trays and 2 paper cups of lemon water. Logan picked at his food. "Let me guess," he said. "There's a corporate angle to this." Alexis smirked. "Of course. You teach, we film it. We prove our hybrid approach is viable. Investors love a redemption arc." He looked sideways at her. "And you?" She hesitated. "I used to think war could be streamlined, that if we eliminated variables, emotion, hesitation, fear, we'd build better soldiers. Smarter. Faster. Cleaner. And now," she looked up, her voice lower. "Now, I think maybe we built ghosts." The breeze shifted between them. Logan leaned forward. "I don't want a desk. I don't want a podium. And I sure as hell don't want a camera crew every time I pick up a rifle." "Then write your own terms," Alexis said softly. He studied her. Behind the pressed suit and corporate polish, he saw it now exhaustion. But not the kind that came from lack of sleep. It was the fatigue of living too long without something real. "You didn't come here just to recruit me," he said. "No. You came here to remember why you started." She didn't answer, but her silence said yes. Later that night, Logan lay awake in the cab of the truck, Lila asleep beside him, curled under a blanket. He stared up at the ceiling liner, fingers laced behind his head. He didn't want to be anyone's hero, didn't want medals, parades, or his name in a program folder. But maybe if he showed these young men how to hold a rifle like it held history, if he could show them how to breathe through fear, shoot through doubt, and walk through silence without needing applause, then maybe that was worth coming out of the shadows for. At 3:17 a.m., Logan finally closed his eyes. At 3:18, Alexis, alone in her trailer, deleted a corporate draft memo and opened a blank document. At the top, she typed, "Project Resolve. Training Module 1. The heart behind the trigger lead advisor, Logan Walker." The next morning, the air at Fort Ridgeline carried the scent of early rain and newly oiled rifles. The sky was a soft gray quilt, low and gentle, casting the entire base in a muted calm. Logan stood outside the motor pool, sleeves rolled grease staining his hands from helping a private fix a jammed ATV carburetor. He didn't need to help. No one asked. But old habits were hard to break, and fixing things in silence came easier than speaking. Logan Walker, the voice again, firm, female, professional but more familiar this time. He didn't need to look up. He recognized the tone. Alexis Stone. Logan wiped his hands on a rag, stood slowly, and met her gaze. She wore jeans today. No blazer. No heels. A Novacore field jacket over a plain gray t-shirt. Still powerful, still elegant, but less like a CEO and more like someone trying to meet a man where he stood. She offered a folder. "You asked for your own terms. I listened." Logan took the folder, flipped it open. 3 pages. Clear. No fluff. Position, civilian combat instinct. Advisor, project. Resolve, duration. 6 months, location. Fort Ridgeline conditions. No cameras without permission. Freedom to instruct without override. Daughter's safety and well-being guaranteed. No public promotion of Logan's name rank or history final clause. If at any point the mission compromises Mr. Walker's values or his relationship with his daughter, he may walk away. No penalties. He closed the folder. Most contracts come with more strings. "I cut them," Alexis said. "I meant what I said. Write your own terms." He looked down, thumb brushing over the edge of the paper. Lila's voice echoed in his mind. "Ba no kon ban juak. Nuba kon ko. The bao vengoy kat kong." He exhaled through his nose. "You know this won't be easy," he said. "I'm not hiring easy," she replied. A long pause. Then Logan gave a single nod. "I'll do it." Later that day, the announcement went up quietly on the internal bulletin. Project Resolve launching. Volunteer Sniper Recalibration Program, led by civilian advisor Logan Walker. Accepting applications from any unit, any rank. Must commit to 8 weeks of training field instincts, traditional ballistics, silent operation, and values-based engagement. This is not about faster. This is about deeper. The response was immediate. Within 2 hours, 20 soldiers signed up. By nightfall, it was 43. Among them, unexpectedly, was Kyle Maddox. Training began the next morning at 500 sharp. No screens, no smart visors, no AI analytics. Just Logan, a chalkboard, and a steel plate target standing 400 yards away in the early mist. He didn't lecture. He didn't shout. He walked. He showed them how to step without crunching gravel, how to feel the weight of a rifle before even lifting it, how to listen to the wind with your skin, not your ears. He didn't talk about war. He talked about what happens after war. Why a shot matters only if the hands pulling the trigger remember the weight of life on the other side of it. Some scoffed at first, but by the end of week 1, even the skeptics stayed behind after drills. And by the end of week 2, every recruit had stopped checking their tablets during breaks. They watched Logan instead. Not just the way he taught, but the way he carried himself. Like a man who had known silence deeper than gunfire, and chose to walk out of it slowly. That evening, Alexis approached the training field as the group disbanded. The sun was dropping behind the ridgeline, casting long shadows across the dirt. Logan was alone, brushing down one of the borrowed rifles with a soft cloth. Lila was drawing in the dirt with a stick a few feet away. "You have their attention," Alexis said quietly. "I don't want it," Logan replied, still focused on the rifle. "That's why it works." He paused, then handed the cloth to Lila, who ran to help. Alexis stepped closer. "I read more of your file last night," she said. He didn't answer, but she saw his jaw shift slightly. "You were given the Silver Star. You never claimed it." "It wouldn't bring her back," he said simply. "Claire," she said softly. "Your wife." He looked at her now. Not angry, just open. Raw. She was the only person who saw both sides of me, he said. The soldier. And the man who wanted to stop being one. And now he looked toward Lila, who had drawn a stick figure holding a rifle, and a smaller figure beside it, with long hair and a sun above. "Now I teach her not to become either," he said. "But something better." Alexis nodded slowly. "You're doing more than that, Logan. You're teaching all of them." He looked at her again this time with something different behind his eyes. Not suspicion, but understanding. And maybe the beginning of trust. "You didn't come out here just to watch," he said. "No," she admitted. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I came to ask you to expand the program." "Expand," he echoed. "To other bases, other commands. This can be more than a quiet side project. This can be a movement." He stared at her. "I said I didn't want a podium." "Then build something stronger," she said. "Build a legacy." Logan didn't reply, but his fingers tightened slightly on the rifle stock, and Alexis knew she'd just lit a different kind of fire in him. At 0430 hours, the Fort Ridgeline training field was still shrouded in morning mist, the air sharp with mountain cold. Frost clung to the metal benches, and a few restless recruits stamped their boots against the gravel, rubbing gloved hands together. Then Logan Walker arrived. He wasn't loud. He never was. Just a silhouette walking out of the fog, carrying that same WWII era Garand like it was an extension of his spine. No clipboard, no whistle, only presence. "Line up," he said. And they did. By now, every soldier in Project Resolve knew the rhythm. Logan's training wasn't about reps or time trials. It was about presence, control, listening. He didn't bark orders. He made them listen to the wind, feel the gravel under their boots, memorize the recoil of their rifle like it was a heartbeat. Today's drill, blind fire. A 3-stage challenge where the shooter was spun 5 times blindfolded, then led to a rifle placed randomly on the range. No scope, no aids, just gut and breath. Logan explained it simply. The body remembers what the brain forgets under stress. This drill teaches your body to trust itself, to slow down even when the world speeds up. There were murmurs, jokes, a few chuckles from the cockier ones, but no one backed out. Not anymore. Kyle Maddox went first. Once the golden boy of precision, he'd returned to Project Resolve with a different fire. Not bitterness, not shame. Something more like humility. He stumbled through the drill, missed 2 of the 3 shots, cursed once under his breath, and then took off the blindfold and asked to try again. That was when Logan gave him the smallest of nods. Not approval, but acknowledgement. The kind you only give a man who's beginning to forgive himself. Word of the program spread quickly. By week 4, colonels from neighboring bases requested observers be allowed to attend. Nova Corps' PR team requested press coverage, but Alexis Stone shut it down with one email. This isn't a media show. This is real. Instead, she watched from the shadows, arms crossed, heart quietly shifting every morning, and something inside her long, buried beneath spreadsheets and defense contracts, began to wake up. One afternoon, Logan called an unscheduled break. The recruits were stunned. Breaks weren't his style. He motioned for them to sit. Then, for the first time, he shared a story. I had a friend in Sangan, he began. Name was Manny Ortiz. Tougher than nails. Grew up in Fresno. Used to play trumpet on the street corner for quarters before he enlisted. The group listened in stillness. Even the wind seemed to pause. Manny had the best shot in our unit. Could put a bullet through a Pepsi can from 900 yards with a dirty scope. But one day, we got pinned on a rooftop. I hesitated. Just half a second. He covered for me. Logan looked down. I walked off that roof. Manny didn't. He looked up again, voice steady but hollow. Every time I line up a shot, I see that rooftop. I hear the dust. I feel the sun on my neck. And I remember why I can't afford to shoot without purpose. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. One of the younger recruits, Private Rizzo, barely 20, wiped at his eyes. No one mocked him, because every man there had their own Manny, or feared someday they would. That evening, Alexis found Logan near the edge of the field, loading spent brass into a canvas pouch. "Why don't you take a day off?" she asked. "You've earned it." Logan gave a dry smile. "A rifle gets rusty when it rests too long." She crouched beside him, watching him work. "You know they worship you, right?" He didn't look up. "That's not the point." "I know," she said softly. "That's why it's working." A long pause. Then she added, "Kyle came to my office today." Logan did look up at that. He asked to be considered for assistant instructor. Logan said nothing at first. Then, "He's not ready." No, Alexis agreed, "but he's trying." Logan set the pouch aside and wiped his hands. "You don't teach someone like Kyle with drills," he said. "You teach him with trust. Give him something to protect, and he'll rise." Alexis nodded slowly. "Then give him Lila," she said. Logan's brow furrowed. "Not in danger," she clarified. "Just let him teach her. Supervised, one-on-one. Show him what it feels like to be watched by someone who believes in him." He was silent. Then, to her surprise, he nodded. "Tomorrow," he said. "But I'll be 3 steps behind." "Of course," Alexis replied. And then she smiled. Not the professional photo op smile, but something real. Something fragile. And Logan, though he didn't say it, noticed. The next morning, under a rising sun, Kyle knelt beside Lila near a portable shooting lane. He showed her how to hold the rifle without fear, how to align the sight with her breath, how to respect the silence before the shot. And as Logan watched from a short distance away, arms folded heart-taut, he saw something shift in Kyle's posture. Not the arrogance of a former champion, but the shoulders of a man starting to carry more than regret. A man learning that the strongest warriors are the ones who teach others to stand. Night had fallen over Fort Ridgeline like a heavy wool blanket, silent and suffocating. The moon hung low behind a sheet of thin clouds, casting pale silver onto the gravel roads and the blacktop roofs of the barracks. Most of the base was asleep, but not Logan Walker. He sat alone on a folding chair outside the motor pool, elbows on his knees, eyes staring into the dark. His rifle rested across his lap, not in alertness, but in memory. Behind him, the overhead light flickered with the soft hum of a base too old and too proud to die quietly. Inside the maintenance shed, someone kicked over a wrench. Logan didn't move. Seconds later, the door creaked open, and Kyle Maddox stepped into view, his silhouette backlit by the dim orange glow. "Didn't mean to wake you," Kyle said. "You didn't." Kyle stepped closer, boots crunching softly. He looked different these days. Less polished, less performative, like something had been burned off and the real man was finally emerging from the ash. "You're not sleeping," Logan said. Not as a question. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck. "Haven't in years." Logan nodded slowly. "You remember all of them, don't you?" Kyle didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Even the ones I never met." That landed between them with weight. Kyle lowered himself onto the concrete stoop, nearby arms resting on his knees. "I used to think the ghosts would go away if I got better," he said. "Sharper. Faster. Like if I trained hard enough, they'd stop following me." Logan looked at him, gaze steady. "They don't leave," he said. "They just stop screaming when you stop running." Kyle swallowed hard. "I've run a long time." "Then stop." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was acknowledgement, the kind only men who've both knelt beside blood in the dirt can truly share. Kyle let out a slow breath. "Logan, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "That day, the rooftop in Sangan, you've talked about Manny. But what happened to you?" Logan stared ahead. "I came down that ladder with his blood on my boots," he said softly. "I walked past his helmet still spinning on the ground. And I realized I'd survived not because I was stronger or smarter, but because he believed I was worth saving." Kyle blinked hard, and I hated that Logan continued, because I wasn't. Not yet. A long pause. "And that's why you train us like this," Kyle said. "Not to win," Logan confirmed. "To become someone worth the sacrifice." The next morning, Logan didn't show up at the range. That had never happened. The recruits gathered uncertain. Even Alexis looked around in mild alarm. Then at exactly 06:05, a clipboard appeared on the bench. Lila stood beside it, holding a folded note. He said she announced today's lesson is about trusting the ones beside you. She handed the note to Alexis and skipped off toward the field. Alexis unfolded it. "If I disappear one day, don't go looking. It'll just mean the mission's done." She folded the note with trembling hands, unsure whether to smile or panic. The trainees ran the morning drill without Logan. Kyle led, not by command, but by quiet motion. He corrected grips. He timed breaths. He whispered encouragements instead of barking orders. And when one recruit, Private Bell, froze before the shot shaking slightly, Kyle didn't push. He knelt beside him and said, "Breathe like someone's counting on you." Bell hit the target. Dead center. At lunchtime, Logan returned. No explanation. He just walked onto the field with a small metal box under his arm and placed it on the bench. "Story time," he said. Everyone sat without being told. He opened the box. Inside a bundle of old letters, a faded photograph, a bent set of dog tags. He held up the photo. "Manny Ortiz," he said. He didn't wear medals. He wore a grin that told you everything would be fine, even when it wouldn't. He passed the photo around. Every man looked at it like it was sacred. Then Logan held up the dog tags. "Every ghost you carry," he said, once carried someone else's fear. Someone else's hope. He paused. "Let them walk beside you, but don't let them lead." That evening, Alexis stood outside the training cabin where Logan sat, cleaning rifles with Lila, humming softly beside him. She stepped onto the porch, unsure how to begin. "You're building more than soldiers," she said. "I'm not building anything," he replied. "I'm just helping them remember who they are without the armor." She looked at him, her voice lower. "And who are you without yours?" He stopped cleaning, looked up. "My daughter's father." Alexis smiled, and it was soft this time, almost unsure. "You're doing something here, Logan. Something real." He nodded once, then said, "So are you." Their eyes met, not in challenge, but in something quieter. Understanding. Respect. And just beneath the surface, something that might become more. That night, Fort Ridgeline slept lighter. Not because the ghosts had gone, but because for the first time they were being carried together. Lila Walker had always watched her father from a distance, on rooftops, in rain, in silence. Not during war, no, those days were long behind them. But since her earliest memories, she had watched Logan walk through the world like someone who carried invisible weight, never quite putting it down. She never saw him cry, never heard him complain, but she always felt something hidden behind his quiet. Until the day she picked up a rifle. It was a Saturday, and training had been canceled due to a military ceremony on base. The air was warmer than usual, the wind still. Logan had planned to take Lila fishing, but when she walked outside in her worn boots and jacket, she didn't carry a tackle box. She carried one of the training rifles, not the Garand. She wouldn't touch that without asking. But a smaller single-shot, 22 long rifle lightweight plane, one the recruits used for basic breath and trigger drills. She set it on the bench near the range. Logan froze when he saw her. "You planning on scaring squirrels?" he asked gently. "No," she said. "I want to learn." He stepped closer. "Lila." "I know what you're going to say," she interrupted, her voice quiet but sure. "You don't want me to be like you." He didn't answer. She looked at him, eyes steady. "But I already am." Logan swallowed hard. "This isn't a game. A rifle doesn't care who holds it." "One wrong breath, I know," she said. "That's why I want you to teach me right." Behind her, Alexis had stepped outside, arms folded, watching from a respectful distance. She didn't say anything, but Logan saw her. And that mattered. They set up a basic drill, 3 static targets, 25 yards, no time pressure. Logan walked Lila through the steps, as if she were one of the recruits, maybe gentler in tone, but no shortcuts. Feet planted, body relaxed, cheek low on the stock. "Not too tight," he murmured. "You don't strangle control, you trust it." Lila nodded, absorbing everything. He guided her breath. In. Hold. Let it go. She squeezed the trigger. Crack! The first shot went wide. She frowned. I jerked. Logan gave a faint smile. You rushed. Happens to everyone. She reset, breathed again. Fired. Ping. The second target spun. Alexis from across the field clapped softly. Lila turned red, but smiled. Again she said. By the third shot, something changed. Not in the air, not in her posture. In Logan. He knelt beside her, watching the way she narrowed her eyes, not with aggression, but with intent. It wasn't about being good. It wasn't about pride. It was about purpose. And suddenly he saw Claire. The same quiet strength, the same fierce kindness, the same fire that lived in small, steady choices. His throat tightened. After the fifth shot, Lila lowered the rifle and looked up. Did I do okay? Logan swallowed hard, then nodded. You did more than okay." Lila turned, and without hesitation wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in years, Logan hugged back with both arms and didn't let go quickly. Later, Alexis found him alone near the maintenance shed running a cloth over the garand. "I saw her shoot," she said. Logan didn't look up. "She surprised me." "She didn't surprise me," Alexis replied. He looked at her, then eyes curious. "She's growing into what you built," she continued. "And she's not just learning to shoot, Logan. She's learning to believe." A long pause. Then Alexis added, "Do you remember the first time you believed in yourself?" Logan stared at the rifle in his hands. "Yeah," he said. "It wasn't on the battlefield. It was the first time Claire looked at me like I wasn't broken." He looked up, and the second time was today, when Lila looked at me like I could be her teacher and her father. Alexis nodded slowly. "You're both," she said. "But you're also something else." "What?" She stepped closer, her voice soft. "You're the bridge between generations, between what we forget and what we must remember." Logan stared at her eyes, searching, and for the first time he didn't look away. That night the campfire crackled behind the barracks. The recruits had gathered off-duty relaxed, just sharing stories and burned marshmallows. Someone passed around an old guitar. Kyle played a few broken chords. Private Bell sang off-key. Lila laughed louder than anyone. And Logan. He sat beside Alexis, not close enough to draw eyes, but close enough that when she shifted just slightly, their arms brushed. She didn't move away. Neither did he. For a long while they just sat there. No words, just the warmth of something unspoken. Something starting. When the fire dimmed and the stars took over the sky, Lila leaned against her father's shoulder. "Dad," she whispered. "Yeah, I think I want to shoot in the next local competition." He looked down, surprised. "I thought you just wanted to learn." "I did," she said. "Now I want to show what you taught me." His heart swelled with something too big for words, so he just nodded and whispered, "Then I'll be in the front row." The competition wasn't anything grand. No medals, no TV cameras, no generals shaking hands in front of flags. Just a dusty range on the edge of Fort Ridgeline, a row of worn benches, and a few dozen folding chairs pulled up by family members and off-duty soldiers. There were a couple of old-timers in faded camo caps, sipping coffee from thermoses. Some spouses clapping politely, and a few kids chasing each other behind the bleachers. But for Logan Walker, it was the most important battlefield he'd ever prepared for. Because this time, it wasn't his hands on the trigger. It was Lila's. She stood near the firing line in her oversized jacket and neatly braided hair, holding her .22 rifle, with the quiet composure of someone who wasn't trying to impress anyone, just trying to do justice to what she'd been taught. Logan knelt beside her, checking the stock, the weight, the sight line. "Just like we practiced," he said, voice steady. "Nothing flashy. Just listen to the wind." "I'm not nervous," Lila whispered. "I know, but my heart's loud." Logan smiled. "Good. That means it's working." Across the field, Alexis stood with a clipboard in one hand, pretending to be just another NovaCore sponsor. But her eyes never left Lila. She wasn't evaluating. She was rooting. The first round was basic 3 stationary targets, 25 yards. Lila hit 2 dead center, 1 slightly off. Polite applause. No one was expecting perfection. But everyone noticed her calm. Round 2, 50-yard moving plate. Harder. Most kids missed completely. Lila waited. Waited. Then crack clipped the edge as it slowed. Kyle Maddox, sitting in the second row with his arms folded, gave a quiet nod of approval. "She's got her old man's patience," he murmured. Logan heard it, said nothing, but a small breath left his chest. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it. The final round came down to 3 kids, Lila among them. 100 yards, wind picking up, 2 shots each, One spinner, one reset plate. She stepped forward as the last to go. The range fell quiet. She exhaled. Logan closed his eyes. Crack. The spinner rocked, danced, then settled. One left. She adjusted. Waded through 2 gusts. Realigned. Crack. Dead center. Silence. Then, roaring applause. Not wild, not stadium loud, but real. From soldiers, from instructors, from her peers, and from Alexis, who didn't clap like a CEO but like someone watching something good return to the world. After the awards were handed out, Lila took 2nd place, missing the top score by a single point. Logan found her sitting on a bench, unwrapping a juice box and humming to herself. "You were incredible," he said. "I was breathing like you told me, even during the spinner, especially during the spinner." Logan smiled and sat beside her. "I've seen a lot of heroes," he said softly, "but none of them ever made me this proud." She leaned her head on his arm. "I just wanted to make you proud." "You did, Lila. You do." They sat in silence for a moment, and then she asked, "Did you win your first shooting match?" Logan chuckled. "I came in last. Misread the wind, dropped a magazine, and tripped on my bootlace." Lila laughed. "Maybe I should teach you now." He nodded solemnly. "Deal." That evening, the Project Resolve team gathered for their final debrief. It had been 6 weeks. 42 soldiers had completed the program. 12 had asked to become assistant mentors. 3 had submitted requests to replicate the initiative at other bases. 1 had written a letter to the Secretary of the Army asking to make the program standard. But Logan wasn't focused on numbers. He stood in front of the group in the now familiar training field, hands behind his back. Lila standing nearby. "I didn't come here to lead a program," he began. "I came here because my daughter asked me if learning to shoot meant learning to protect." He paused. "I didn't teach you how to fire a weapon. I taught you how to own it. And that's not about pull strength or range." He looked at Kyle. "It's about knowing who you are when the noise fades. Then to the rest, and who you choose to be when no one's looking." A long silence followed. Then someone clapped. Then another. And soon the entire group rose not just to applaud, but to stand with him. Not in formation, but in respect. Afterward, Alexis approached him near the shooting bench, the sky dimming behind her, in soft hues of orange and lavender. "You gave them something they couldn't download," she said. Logan turned to her. "You did too. You let it happen." She hesitated, then said, "You know, after this I could make you a very wealthy man. Full-time contract, national tour, even build a civilian training academy in your name." He didn't smile, didn't mock, just looked at her with quiet honesty. "I don't want my name on a building," he said. "I want it to mean something to her." He nodded toward Lila, who was talking with Kyle, the two laughing like old friends. Alexis stepped closer. "So what now?" Logan looked at her. "At sunrise, he said we go home." And then he paused. Then in a voice quieter than she'd ever heard from him, "Then you can come visit, if you like porches and slow mornings." She smiled. "Only if there's coffee." "There's always coffee," he said. And for the first time he reached for her hand and didn't let go. The wind at the international range didn't play fair. It shifted direction every few minutes, drifting down from mountain ridges and swirling through the steel archways like it had a mind of its own. Flags fluttered, dust skittered across the firing lanes, and the teams adjusted again and again, their scopes flicking like nervous eyes. But Logan Walker didn't flinch. He stood at the edge of the platform in his olive green jacket sleeves, rolled to the elbow, the old M1 Garand in his hands like it had never left them. He didn't check wind speed. He didn't consult tech. He just looked, listened, and waited. Project Resolve had been granted a special exhibition slot during the Allied Forces Precision Challenge, an elite range event where global special ops teams tested their finest marksmen in front of NATO brass. Logan hadn't planned on going. He didn't care about competition anymore, didn't crave the stage. But Lila did. And sometimes, a father's redemption lives in showing up, especially when you thought you'd sworn off the battlefield. "I want them to see you," she had said weeks earlier, standing in the cabin with her fingers wrapped around the strap of her backpack. "I've been seen," Logan replied. "Not like this," she said. "Not by the world." And that's why he came. The Resolve team had trained hard. Kyle Maddox, now leaner in ego but sharper in spirit, stood beside Logan, prepping the team's gear and helping the younger recruits adjust their breathing masks and barrel heat guards. Logan had turned down offers for a custom rifle, even one designed by Novacore. He'd brought the Garand, the same one that had fired in Fallujah, the same one he'd handed down through silence, not ceremony. The same one Lila had once called the rifle that feels like a promise. The NATO official stepped onto the platform. "Exhibition team Fort Ridgeline ready." Kyle looked at Logan. Logan nodded once. "Ready?" Kyle answered. The announcer's voice crackled across the PA system. And now, a unique demonstration from the United States, a legacy precision, shot no digital assistance, no algorithmic calibration. "Just a man, a rifle, and a target at 700 meters, the crowd murmured. 700 meters was madness without a scope. No assist, no drones, no second chances. But Logan stepped forward. He took position behind the sandbag rest, breathing deep, eyes narrowing as the wind curled through the stands. He wasn't alone. In the crowd, Lila stood in the front row, press credentials clipped to her lanyard, a pencil in one hand, a notebook in the other. She was there to record, not just cheer. And Alexis stood beside her, arms folded, but not out of distance. She was holding her breath. The shot had been attempted before. The X-Brake shot 2 targets placed in alignment 700 meters away. One solid steel plate 5 inches wide. Behind it, a suspended ceramic spinner barely visible from the bench. The challenge: strike the front plate and send the bullet clean through the opening to hit the rear spinner without touching the edges. Most said it couldn't be done without tech. Most had never met Logan Walker. He didn't shift his weight, didn't adjust his gloves. He just whispered one sentence to himself. "This one's for all the moments I held my breath and never pulled the trigger." Then, boom! The Garand roared like a lion refusing to grow old. Time slowed. The front plate clanged, jerking backward as the bullet passed cleanly through. Then, a half-second pause. Clang! The spinner rocked, dead center. The range erupted. It wasn't just cheers, it was shock. The kind of stunned applause that rolled like thunder across the stadium. Soldiers stood. Officials removed their headsets. Technicians dropped clipboards. The announcer didn't even try to contain it. Ladies and gentlemen, history just repeated itself. Logan didn't raise his arms, didn't bow. He stood, handed the Garand to Kyle without a word, and stepped down from the platform. But before he reached the exit gate, a small pair of arms wrapped around his waist. Lila. She looked up at him, eyes glassy with pride. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Logan said. "We did." Behind them, Alexis stepped forward, not with a camera crew or a handshake, but with something simpler, a smile that said, "I saw everything, and I stayed to see more." That evening back at the training cabin, a quiet celebration unfolded. Not with medals, not with speeches, but with grilled burgers, a portable radio playing old Springsteen, and Lila sitting on Alexis's shoulders, pointing out constellations. Kyle sat beside Logan on the cabin steps. "You realize that shot's going to be studied for decades, right?" he said. "You just wrote yourself into sniper folklore." Logan shook his head. "Let them study the moment, not me." Kyle nodded. "Still, that was the cleanest shot I've ever seen." Logan looked at him. "Funny," he said. "It's the first one I didn't take alone." Later that night, Logan stood on the porch, arms resting on the rail eye scanning the moonlit trees. Alexis joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "I was wrong," she said. "About what you said earlier. You didn't want a name on a building. But I think your name's already written where it counts." He turned to her. "In the people," she said. "In every soldier you trained, every ghost you helped quiet, every daughter who now sees her father as more than just his scars." He didn't reply. Instead, he held out his hand. She took it. And this time, there were no ghosts between them, only warmth, and the quiet promise of what still could be. The porch light above Logan's cabin buzzed faintly, casting a soft halo on the wood floorboards. It was quiet, almost too quiet, after the whirlwind of the international range and the weight of applause from hundreds of foreign officials. But this was the kind of silence Logan Walker understood. Not the kind you feared after combat. The kind you chose like an old friend who waited for you to return barefoot and honest. He sat alone in a rocking chair, the garand leaning against the post beside him, a chipped ceramic mug cooling in his hands. He didn't need more medals, or speeches, or headlines. He had Lila sleeping safely inside. He had the air clean in his lungs. And tonight, he had company. Alexis stepped out of the cabin like she'd lived there her whole life. No blazer, no boots, just a soft cotton sweater, jeans, and bare feet. She held a folded flannel blanket under one arm, a worn novel in the other. Her hair, usually tight in its corporate bun, fell gently over her shoulders in loose waves. She didn't say a word. Just set the book on the railing, pulled a chair beside his, and draped the blanket over both their laps. Then she leaned back and breathed. Logan glanced at her, half smiling. "No spreadsheets tonight." "None," she whispered. "No quarterly forecasts." She shook her head. "No defense contracts." Her eyes closed. "Just us," she said. They sat there for a long while, letting the crickets fill the spaces words didn't need to occupy. It was the kind of silence you earned after hurt, after healing, after letting go. And then Logan asked without turning, "Why did you really come back tonight?" Alexis didn't open her eyes. But she answered, "Because I've spent most of my life building things that can be replaced." A pause. "And I think I finally found something that can't." Logan didn't speak. His heart did. The way it thudded. The way it knew. She opened her eyes and turned to him. "I was raised to believe feelings were liabilities," she said. "That leadership meant staying above connection. But I watched you carry a rifle older than me with more dignity than most carry their own names. And then I saw you lay it down for a girl who just wanted to see you smile." Logan's jaw worked slightly. He looked down, then back up. "I don't have much," he said. "No pension. No house. Just a beat-up truck, a child to protect, and a garage that leaks when it rains." Alexis reached out, placed her hand over his. "You have everything," she whispered. "And for the first time in years, I want to be part of something real." He turned, truly turned. Now eyes meeting hers, not like a man waiting for permission, but like a man who finally believed he deserved this moment. "Are you sure?" he asked. She didn't answer. She leaned in. And in that kiss, soft, unhurried, fragile as dawn, there were no fireworks, no orchestral swells, just truth. Just 2 broken people who'd stopped pretending they weren't worth loving. Inside, Lila rolled over in her sleep, pulling the blanket higher. The stars outside hung heavy in the black sky, like a promise etched into eternity. And on that porch, 2 hearts beat side by side. Not loudly, but in rhythm. The next morning, Logan found her in the kitchen. She was barefoot again, humming softly, scrambling eggs in a cast-iron pan that had seen better decades. She wore one of his old shirts, sleeves rolled sloppily, coffee stain already blooming near the hem. She looked domestic. She looked dangerous. She looked like home. He leaned on the doorway. "I could get used to this." She glanced over her shoulder, smirking. "The eggs." No, he said, stepping closer. You. She turned frying pan in one hand, eyebrow raised. Careful, Marine. That almost sounded romantic. I've been known to surprise people, he replied. She stepped forward and kissed him again, quickly this time. Then, your daughter's already claimed the porch swing as hers. Logan nodded solemnly. She's territorial, and she says I have to prove I can gut a fish before I'm allowed to stay the weekend. He grinned. Sounds about right. She's tough. She's her mother's courage, Logan said softly, and maybe her father's heart. Alexis looked at him. What about me? He didn't answer right away, then said, You're the page I didn't know was blank, but now I can't stop writing on it. She blinked, caught off guard, then laughed, a real unrehearsed belly-deep laugh that filled the room like sunlight. You should try saying that in front of a boardroom. I'd rather whisper it to you, he said, stepping in and wrapping his arms around her waist, the smell of eggs and coffee, and possibility all around them. That afternoon, they sat in the yard watching Lila practice slow trigger pulls on a mock range Kyle had built using cans and wire. Alexis leaned her head on Logan's shoulder. She's getting better, she said. She's getting braver, he replied. And you, he thought for a moment. I'm not the man I was. Good. I'm not the man I planned to be either. She looked up at him. But maybe you're the man we needed. He looked down at her eyes, quiet. Maybe. Then gently, will you stay? Alexis smiled, brushing a piece of wind-blown hair from his forehead. I'm already here. 6 months later, the wind carried a different kind of silence across Fort Ridgeline. It wasn't the heavy, uncertain stillness of a base waiting for orders. It was reverent, grounded, earned. The kind of quiet that came after healing. Lila Walker stood in her new brown boots dress, uniform, crisp hands behind her back, like her father had taught her. The brass button on her cadet vest caught the morning sun as she looked up at the freshly mounted plaque on the east wall of the training range. It shimmered, simple, elegant, unassuming. Just like him. Dedicated to Logan Walker, who taught us that the strongest weapon is the heart, holding the trigger. Her fingers curled slightly. She didn't cry, but she smiled. The kind of smile her mother once wore when Logan used to come home late but safe. The kind of smile that meant, I know exactly what you gave to be here. Behind her, a small crowd had gathered. No podiums, no generals in full dress, no ribbon cutting, just soldiers young and old, veterans, instructors, a few high schoolers wearing ROTC pins, and Alexis Stone. She stood in civilian clothes, now soft blue blouse hands folded in front of her. Her Nova Corps badge was gone. She hadn't needed it in months. She wasn't there as an executive. She was there as family. Logan stepped out from behind the range office at exactly 0900, wearing the same olive field jacket sleeves rolled. As always, boots dusty from the gravel path. He moved slower now, not from age or injury, but from comfort. Like a man who'd finally stopped running from something. His eyes swept the crowd with quiet gratitude. Then they found Lila. He stopped. She gave a crisp, perfect salute. He returned it not sharp, not ceremonial, but true. The kind of salute only a father could give a daughter who had made him proud beyond words. A small man with wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Colonel Peterson, the base commander. He cleared his throat. I won't keep you long, he said. This range has seen a lot of shooters come and go. Tech has changed. Weapons have changed. But in all those years, one thing stayed constant. He turned toward Logan. The shooters who remembered who they were before they picked up the rifle were always the best. He gestured to the plaque. And this man reminded us of that. Polite applause. But it wasn't the clapping that hit Logan. It was the stillness that followed. The way no one spoke. The way they looked at him, not as a relic, not as a legend, but as a standard. A quiet, deeply human standard of strength. After the ceremony, Logan stepped aside, while others filtered forward to take photos with the plaque. Lila joined him, bouncing slightly on the balls of her feet. "You didn't tell me they were putting up a plaque," she teased. "I didn't know until yesterday," he replied. "Bet you hate it." He looked at her eyes, twinkling. "I don't hate it." She raised an eyebrow. "You're softening. Don't tell anyone." She grinned and took his hand. "I'm glad they see you now. For real." He looked at her seriously. "I'm glad you do." Alexis approached a moment later, handing Logan a bottle of water. She wore her hair down. He'd grown to love the way the sunlight touched the streaks of gray that had started to show. She never dyed them. Said they were earned. "You survived the ceremony," she said. "Barely. Want me to commission a bronze statue next?" He gave her a look. "I'll retire to the mountains." She smiled, leaning into him. "Then I guess the porch and the swing set will have to do." They stood there a while longer, as the crowd thinned. Kyle walked past, now in full instructor uniform, exchanging nods with both of them. He had a scar near his left temple, now earned during a training accident, but he wore it like a badge. He'd become the kind of man Logan would have trusted on a rooftop. That Logan thought was the true victory. That evening, Logan sat on the same porch where it had all begun. The cabin behind him glowed with warm yellow light. He could hear Lila inside giggling as she beat Alexis at a board game she hadn't learned to play, until the CEO turned mentor insisted they balance out their skill sets. The stars were bright tonight, the kind of sky that asked nothing, only gave. Logan leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, and he remembered. All of it. Fallujah. Claire's last words in the hospital. The day Lila first asked to hold a rifle. The day Alexis walked into his life like a challenge he didn't ask for, but desperately needed. He remembered being alone. And now, he wasn't. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Dad." He looked up. Lila stood barefoot in the doorway, her hair a mess, her eyes wide and sleepy. "What's up, sweetheart? I forgot something." "What?" She ran over and hugged him tight. He blinked, surprised. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For showing me that strong doesn't mean perfect." He hugged her back, eyes glistening. "It just means you keep standing," he said, "even when the wind won't let you." She nodded, then added, "Mom would have loved the plaque." He looked out at the trees, voice rough. "She's still here, every time I breathe." When she went back inside, Logan stayed on the porch. The stars above blinked like soft rifle flashes in a sky that had finally run out of war. He reached for Alexis's hand as she joined him. Minutes later, her shoulder brushing his. She leaned into him silent. And together they watched the dark become light. You don't need $1 million weapon to make history. You just need the heart to hold the trigger steady, and the courage to aim for something worth protecting. Where are you watching from today? We love hearing from people around the world, and it means so much to know these stories find their way to hearts near and far. Feel free to share your thoughts, or simply let us know your city or country. We read every single comment. And if this story touched something in you, whether it was the quiet strength of a father, the healing of a wounded heart, or the power of love, without needing words, please consider subscribing to the channel. We share stories like this every week as gentle reminders that kindness, courage, and second chances still matter. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in the quiet miracles of life.